Welcome to another day of Soul Healing Summit 2. Today, we have a guest that is not only close to my heart, but is another true angel human. His name is Shelton, and he's a master in QiGong, which is an ancient holistic healing modality that combines traditional Chinese medicine with movement, breath, and visualization. Chris has worked with Special Olympic teams, professional athletes, and celebrities looking for that deeper meaning in their lives. He's the founder of Morning Crane Healing Arts Center in Los Angeles and the author of the QiGong for Self-Refinement. And what a better time to incorporate the power of healing movement in the world than right now when we're ascending at such a high speed. Welcome, Chris. How are you doing today?
Great. And so nice to see you again. Thanks you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's such a pleasure to have you on today. And I got to actually experience your beautiful sense of humor aside from the magical healing that you bring into this world. Chris, I want to hear about your experience and who were you before and how did you allow this beautiful light to finally fill up the entirety of what makes you you?
I would say that going through a lot of suffering, a lot of the suffering I created for myself, in hindsight, looking back on everything, I finally at some point, I don't know if it was a conscious choice or a subconscious choice or a combination of all of the above, but I chose to wake up and I chose to, really recognize that the struggles that I was having was a continuous pattern. And so I either dive deeper into myself or I continue to blame other people and, not take responsibility. And then as a result, suffer the consequences. So I would say that being introduced to Qigong over 30 years ago was what started the path for me to where I am right now, because the lifestyle of how I was living my life, and even after I started first practicing Qigong, things would really start getting good for myself, and then something would, veer me off in some extreme tangent. And so that Johnny Cash song, "Walk the Line," that was definitely me, because, I could be good Chris or I could be naughty Chris. So I tend to go on the side more of naughty Chris. And so anyways, it was one of those things that really just finally I had to wake up and say, this isn't working out. What can you do different? How can you show up new and different? And then that's how I got to be where I am today.
When you were first introduced to Qigong, were you ready for it or did you just miss it several times and then you heard that message over and over again until you finally listened to it?
That's a good question. Actually, I because of, like I said, my own suffering after having my second heart attack at age 19 from a meth overdose, and then finally putting myself into Taekwondo to wake myself up, because I realized the path I was going to end up dead in prison or both. One night before a match, I was accidentally kicked in the back and almost paralyzed, which led me to a doctor who had a therapist working for her, and he was a martial artist, and he was talking to me about chi. So I'm 20 years old at the time now, and the closest thing back then that I could get to chi was like Cheez Its and Cheese Whiz, or
And
cheesy
Cheetos.
jokes,
Cheetos.
or Cheetos and cheesy jokes. And so but I had, back then nobody was talking about Qigong in the United States, or very few people. Tai Chi was starting to kind of take hold because of Bruce Lee bringing martial arts to the San Francisco Bay Area, to Oakland and such. Kung Fu definitely was gaining momentum, but nobody was talking about these internal arts like this. And so anyways, I started taking these Qigong classes, and I had other health problems too at the time. Severe digestive problems, I had severe sinus problems, lived on all kinds of medications and antibiotics. Western medicine couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Like if I had an avocado or a salad, I was in a fetal position 2 hours later or vomiting, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. Anyways, so I started taking these Qigong classes, and which are gentle movements, which are actually the foundation of Tai Chi, but easier. And I kid you not, within about 6 months, it was a realization like, wow, when did I stop living on the antibiotics? When did I stop living on the Sudafed and the Actifed and Tums and those kinds of things? So I thought, man, if a simple, specific movement or a specific meditation could do this to me, there must be something to the medicine. So that's when I dove in deeper with Qigong, and then I started studying classical Chinese medicine.
That is so profound. And I want to reiterate what you just said because what I'm seeing from your story is that by applying qigong, which is a movement meditation, you're actually able to come back into your body. Because if you ask yourself, why would you do drugs, alcohol, or any of these things, is because maybe life or whatever you're dealing in the moment, it's so unbearable that at times we look for escapes or something to help us. And you discovering qigong and doing this movement meditations actually allow you to come back into your physical body, and one by one begin to clear those trauma that were infused in energy points in your body. Am I correct?
Yeah, escapism with any type of addiction, right? And whether it's food addiction, sex, or alcohol is a form of escapism. Yeah, so I think for me, what I saw really the benefits health wise. And Qigong, by the way, was the foundation of classical Chinese medicine and acupuncture. Enlightened ones thousands of years ago were so close to source, to God, and so close to understanding the interconnectedness between all things and people, the environment, weather patterns, that they are able to understand how this organism functioned on a much greater and deeper level, and how how the sun, moon, and the stars affect us, and so our astrology and all these kinds of things. So I think it's really amazing is that it was the thing though that allowed for me to wake up, to dive deeper into myself, to cultivate myself, to refine myself, minus the ego. I mean, there's a certain part of the ego that's healthy and
Okay,
good.
we need to know this. How did you find your ego? That's a big one.
I'm not saying I'm mastered at it, but
Okay.
no, no. And there's a certain part of the ego that's definitely is healthy, right? If you're being bullied by somebody and you have to make a stand, some people might say, well, that's the ego coming up. But yeah, that's the healthy side of the ego, being the empath and just taking stuff on and finally saying, you know what, I'm not going to take this on anymore. That's the healthy side of the ego showing up. Well, but the ego self that says the self-limiting beliefs, or the ego self that is trying to predict what somebody else is thinking, or what somebody, or interpreting the wrong way what somebody has said to you, that's where the art comes in. And so I would say for myself, I have not mastered my ego. I still have an ego, that's for sure. But I do check in with myself. That I do check in. So before, I used to be very reactive, and I used to be very, very angry, when I was younger, especially through my 20s and stuff like that. And people say, Chris, you're angry. I'd be like, oh, screw you, you're angry. What are you talking about? And I really realized, like, no, I was, but that was also the contributing factor for all my digestive issues as well, too. So
Mm.
now what I do is I actually will check in with myself. And if somebody does something that comes across kind of harsh, I will sit on it sometimes for a couple of days, and I make a conscious choice. Do I say something and then let it go? Or do I not say anything at all, but still let it go?
In other words, solving them within you and letting it go versus dwelling on it and holding it somewhere in your body that then you'll need, years of qigong to clear and let
Right.
go.
Well, yeah, sometimes it's years of qigong, but also too, maybe it might be within the next couple of days, or whatever, or the next morning, wake up with a frozen neck, right?
Would it
Yeah.
be safe to assume that any aches that we have in about, like, not tensions or stiffness that we have in our body, that's simply a lot of energy being stuck in that center point, and that could be trauma, that could be frustration, that could be anything.
Yeah, and so what I recommend, like I tell my clients, and like in the clinical practice, every single neck cervical issue that I've seen, cervical stenosis, arthritis in the cervical spine or whatnot, unless you're doing jujitsu and someone popped your shoulder out, or you got into a car accident and immediately from the car accident, you had a stiff neck, not weeks later, but immediately afterwards. That's different. That's a physical, that's definitely a physical thing going on. But if you wake up one morning and you can't turn your head and you say, oh, well, I think my dog yesterday pulled me too hard taking the dog for a walk, or I think my pillow is bad, or my mattress is bad, always ask patients, take a look, because chances are something emotionally happened that you suppressed. And it could be something as simple as you got in a fight with your spouse, suppressed it, or didn't have resolve, right? Or your significant other. Maybe your dog ran away, or you had to put a pet to sleep, and then those are the things, because the acupuncture vessels that connect to the heart directly or indirectly all run from either the face down to the hands, or vice versa, from the fingers up to the face. And so every single neck issue has to come back to emotions obstructing the heart.
I remember having some of those back in the days. What were you in my life, Kristen?
Well, it took us time for the stars to align,
For the stars to align for us to be ready. Actually, I want to ask a few more questions because, Chris, you're such a humble individual with all the talents that you have, and Qigong is only one of your few masteries that you possess. A few weeks ago, I had injured my knee, and I was so lucky to have Chris coming in my path. And you did something with the coin. I would love you to describe that, what you did for my knee, because I had the stiffness. I remember I tried to stand up and my knee was hurting so much, and I was wearing a brace at that time. And you're like, "Oh, let me do something," and all of a sudden I was able to walk back and forth like there was nothing.
Yeah, so gua sha is a technique, and my teacher, she would use, my acupuncture teacher, she would use a coin. Now, a lot of people will use a piece of polished jade or a Chinese soup spoon. There's other fancier gadgets out there nowadays but really a sterilized quarter is all you really need. And what happens is that when I'm doing gua sha on a specific point, it's understanding what the function of the point is. Like, even though like you had knee stiffness, I knew that there's two acupuncture points behind the knee, bladder 40 and kidney 10, that if you trigger those points or get those points to release, it allows for blood and fluid and chi to move through that area better. And so all I did was, had you lie face down, and we did gua sha on the back of those points there and such, and a couple of other points. And what that does is that it energetically helps to open up those channels, which then allows for the pathogen or whatever is trapped there to release. And also too, even if I'm talking to somebody while I'm touching certain points or using gua sha or whatever else that it is that I'm doing, I'm actually moving energy through me. So there are specific qigong practices that make me more sensitive to people. Like if a person comes in, for example, and they're smiling at me, but I could feel them. I could feel if they're angry. I could feel if they're anxious. I could feel if they're sad. And so that same energy that I could feel on somebody else, I also can sense and palpate and then transmit and move chi through me. And anybody can learn how to do this. And but it's not only just me, right? It's like I tell people that come in, it's really God, source, whatever you want to describe it as. And I'm just the vehicle. Yes, I have this knowledge and this wisdom that I've studied throughout, the 30 some odd years, but it's not just me, right? It's the client, and then it's that which is much greater than I. And
They
so,
will keep unnamed.
yes, yeah,
Their powers beyond our physical and mental and imaginary powers that we can't explain yet. They come in, they help us, they assist us, they work, and they guide us in our way. And I
yeah,
was able to walk. So
that's amazing. Yeah. So when a patient comes into clinic, and that's how I ended up in Los Angeles, anyways. I mean, we're from the San Francisco Bay Area, and that's where the clinical practice was in San Jose, the heart of Silicon Valley. So if you heard about that bank that just collapsed in Silicon Valley, that was where I'm from, and
you
that's where
left at the right time.
I left. Right, and luckily I didn't have any investments in there. But that's where I started the Morning Crane Healing Arts Center like 23 years ago. Now I have another practitioner that runs it up there, Christine. She runs the clinic up there. And I ended up here in Los Angeles because my old friend, Eric the trainer, Hollywood physique expert, over 12, 13 years ago, heard about what I was doing up there as far as the success rate. And he told me, he goes, "Chris, I heard from Coach Kung Lee what you're doing, and nobody's doing this in Los Angeles." And I said, "Come on, Eric, give me a break. There's millions of people down here. There has to be somebody." He goes, "No, I know the who's who." And at first I thought he was really full of it, but what started happening was that they're flying me back and forth, and he was giving me all of his high profile clients. That's how I met, David, and that's how I was on tour with Def Leppard and Journey for a while with Eric. I've met all these beautiful and amazing people, and so
That's
yeah,
how we met.
that's how we met, right, on at Noni Land, right, and
Yes, in Hawaii.
in Kauai, yeah, and 65 of us all flew to Kauai, but luckily we got the private tour while everybody else took off. That we stayed, and then we had a lot of fun. But Yeah, because of the success rate. So when a patient comes in, I expect there to be a transformation, not the third visit down the road, not the fifth. Like on the first visit, I expect there to be a change. And it's not only that expectation, but it's also then teaching the patient how to take care of it themselves, understanding what the etiology is behind the dysfunction, and understanding too, with a lot of times, like I was talking about the neck issue, a lot of times these inflammatory conditions or chronic pain conditions or whatnot actually come back to emotions. And so if you then teach them specific qigong practices in order to help to get in there, because I understand how the internal organs function according to science, but in Chinese medicine, these organs have a much greater functionality, and different organs gets house different negative emotions. And when those emotions aren't processed properly, that's what shows up as inflammation. That's what shows up as disease. Because especially down here in Los Angeles, I see a lot of beautiful and fit people. But yet, if they're still dying of carotid artery disease, what are they missing? The mental emotional part.
The most important part, the alignment with our heart, soul, mind, and body.
Yeah, so when we look at inflammation, I see somebody who's physically fit and, has a fatty liver disease, but doesn't drink, well, my question to them is, how do you deal with your anger and your resentments?
Those are stored in liver,
Yep,
yes.
stored in the liver. So, and the liver finally gets to the point where it says, liver alone. Just kidding.
Oh, yeah. It took me a second to get that
Second.
joke. I'm in Seattle, you in Los Angeles. There's a little bit of distance.
You're right. There's a little bit of a time delay there between.
There's definitely a little bit of a time delay. And you mentioned something as you do this practice and as you help people with the physical body stuff, you also channel chi through your body, where you move that chi through your body. Would you please share with us or teach us how to do that if it's
Mm.
possible? I'm
So
definitely putting you on the spot.
yeah, well, okay. Well, the first step is that okay. So here's a quote I like to say. They say that the superior doctor is one that can prevent disease before disease sets in. Qigong is a methodology in which it teaches you how to become your own superior doctor. And what does that mean? That means that you become so sensitive and so aware of your body that you feel when an organ is, or more than one organ is out of balance before it shows up as disease. So one of my favorite Qigong practices that I have on iTunes, it's called, and Spotify, it's called the Center Balance Meditation by Shelton. And I'm guiding you through this meditation through the outside of the body, and then through the inside of the body. And when you do that practice enough, what will happen is that you'll develop this knowingness of your body. I'm not talking like a tangible knowing, like, me holding on to this cord here, but like just this understanding, like on the physical level, just this knowing, and you feel, let's say, when the spleen is out of balance or whatever. And then what happens if you then study any of the other practices that I teach, like the spleen cleansing exercise or the lung cleansing exercise, then which organ cleansing exercise then to tap into in order to be able to correct the disharmony or the dysfunction. And then we could follow up even more by, then we could say, okay, well, if we know we have a spleen dysfunction, which, by the way, in clinical practice is one of the main dysfunctions that we see in clinic. Liver and spleen dysfunctions are probably the biggest. Then we say, okay, well, what kind of foods do we eat to benefit the spleen? What kind of foods are contraindicated? Because even if we think that it's healthy, it may be contraindicated to tonify or to strengthen that specific organ, because all these organs have different flavors and tastes that are associated with them. And yeah, so that center and balance meditation, I would say that's the foundational practice of doing every single day, because it composes or encompasses the yin aspect, which is mindfulness. Then it encompasses the yang aspect, which is you're actually visualizing and doing something internally. Because all these internal organs, it's like our relationships, right? We have to have interdependent relationships. Same thing happens inside the body. All these organs have to work together. The heart is not separate from the intestines, and it's not separate from your pancreas, or the liver. They all have to work together as an interdependent relationship. And if they're all working harmoniously and your emotional state is healthy, then guess what? You have optimum health, but also too, your vibrancy and your longevity then naturally increases.
Isn't that interesting as we go in an ascension process and we do all these things to become and to lead to that oneness where the individuality goes away and we're one? That starts in our body. What you just said, harmonizing the relationship between the organs. So if we truly are living towards building that new earth, that oneness, let's begin that with the physical body. Can you build a oneness between your stomach and your liver and your
Mhm.
lungs and
Right.
everything in your body, and then build that relationship with you and your body? So yeah, everything starts here before we go out there and we're trying to change the world. We change the world from inside, from
Yes.
within. And the
Mhm.
physical body is the first communicator that knocks on a door like, hey, something's not going on right. Like whatever communication between the heart and the mind, it's not aligned. Hey, just
Right.
keeps knocking and knocking until we listen.
Yeah, and when we want to create positive change in the world, we have to change ourselves, right? And if we're seeing resistance in our outside environment, we have to go in and look at our internal environment. If we are seeing these riots that are going on and these mass shootings and stuff, and we can't say and sit in our bedrooms or sit in our living rooms watching the news saying, we need to have a war on guns or we need to have a war on crime. No, because when you say that term war, all you're doing is you're creating more war. Instead, if you make yourself internal self peaceful, that radiates outward, right? That's a ripple effect. And like I tell some of my clients, if you have any angst towards a certain political group or politician or whatever, and you have all this internal stuff going on, even if you're hiding inside your own house, that ripples out and it attaches to other people of that same vibration. So maybe you're not somebody out there rioting and stuff like that, creating havoc in our society, but because of your own internal havoc, it radiates out and connects to those people. So if you want to create the change, be mindful over your thoughts, be mindful over what you are thinking. And yes, you're human, true. You get affected by different things that you disagree with. This is where these qigong practices come into play, is because it's meant to work with, at least the style that I teach is meant to work with your mental emotional health. And if your mental emotional health is stable, and if you understand what causes different types of psychological disorders, obsessive disorders, then you understand what practices you could do, what foods you could add in or avoid from your diet. But then change the paradigm, change that lens for what you're viewing things from, and change your thought process. And sometimes, and going back to the ego that we started off with here, sometimes you can't stop a thought. You can't stop a negative thought. So if you're conscious of it and you acknowledge that thought to yourself and say, you know what, to yourself, say, I can't stop this obsessive thought about this person or this situation, but I'm going to be the observer over it. Guess what? Now you're consciously participating in that thought process, right? Now you are a participant as opposed to being unconscious, like so many people unfortunately are, walk around unconscious, not paying attention to what they're thinking about or what they are putting their focus into. But now you are a conscious observer. Now you're taking a role or you're playing a part in the thought process and being the witnesser.
So be mindful of your thoughts. And that is where the first step is created, is choosing those thoughts that are empowering to build that dream life that you choose to have. One question that was coming out as you were going through different emotions, because one of the predominant emotions that is happening in the collective, that is present in the collective right now, it's the fear. Which organs or how does fear actually show up in the body?
So fear shows up as a couple ways. Well, first of all, it attacks the main organ that attacks is the kidney system. And that kidney network, it influences so much. It influences your bladder, your reproductive system, your bones, all your glands in your body, the brain, the marrow. It's the foundation for all the fluids of the body, like blood and sweat and cerebral fluids, spinal fluids. It's the foundation for the heat, which is the motivated force needed for all the assimilation processes like digestion. So it attacks the kidney system. It attracts, and then it'll attract, if you're too caught up in fear, then because those little little adrenal glands rest on top of the kidneys, then it affects those adrenals. And the problem with this is that if we get in that place of constant fear, then that sympathetic nervous system is constantly on. And when God developed our bodies, that sympathetic nervous system was only set there in place to protect us, like if we're being chased by a bear, or to get out of there, or if our house was on fire. It's not set to be watching the news 24/7, getting caught up in other people's affairs and such, and allowing it to penetrate. And we saw this through over the last 3 years, how much fear. My wife and I have government contracts with Northern California. We're in charge of the 33,000 employees for employee wellness. We got to see just what this fear was doing to people. And we got to hear horrible stories of what was happening with people, physicians not being able to practice medicine, going into the hospitals and shooting themselves. Things that you didn't hear on the news, we were hearing about. And so the problem with this collective fear is that it weakens the kidney system. It weakens our ability to make rational decisions and judgments, right? It affects our thinking, affects our sleep. And if we don't get enough sleep, then guess what? The kidneys get even more depleted, because one of the things that the kidneys, that replenishes the kidneys, is proper sleep. And so we have this vicious circle that happens, and then we start to see other issues come in. And then, going back into addiction and escapism, because the fear is so much. We got to actually see the real numbers of the alcohol relapses, the spousal abuse, the child abuse, the things that was triggered from all this. It was really unnecessary, by the way, but all this stuff that was triggered. And so as a result of that, that actually weakens the organism. So if you do a QiGong practice to strengthen the kidneys, if you do a practice like the white pearl meditation, which is a simple meditation of focusing the breath right below the belly button. If you make sure you get enough sleep, if you make sure to set a time limit on how much social media or news that you're watching, I think it's imperative. And the root, though, is, what is your faith in God, or what is your faith in Christ? Where's your faith at? Because if you really have that faith, then the reality is that then you don't walk in fear. Right? You don't walk in fear, because you already know that you have that power contained within you that emanates through you, right? And so my suggestion to a lot of people during the last 3 years is, how's your faith practice? Where did that go? And that's part of the reason why you saw that, people, they're shutting down churches and stuff like that. And the problem with that is that people don't have a place to congregate and to support one another. But it is one of my main questions to clients is, yes, let's do the kidney cleansing exercise to tonify those kidneys. Focus on the fear. So the difference with QiGong, as opposed to just seeing a therapist, is that, yes, I will ask the client to focus on something in the past or the present that created the fear, in this case for them. Feel it, who's involved, what's involved. And then as they inhale, pull a blue cloud into the kidneys, and then as they exhale, either make the healing sound for the kidneys, which is fu, or they do the kidney cleansing exercise. So yes, I'm peeling off the scab, but by doing this specific exercise, by focusing on the organ for which that emotion affects, focusing on the color for which affects that organ, this is how we release the vibration inside the body.
You must have heard my question telepathically, because I was channeling a question for the collective on what would be a movement or a practice to clear the kidney. And you just explained that. So thank you.
Sure. See,
You're ahead of time.
We're more connected than you might know.
Yes, absolutely. Is there a specific movement that anybody can do when they wake up in the morning to get that chi in their body?
Specific movement. Well, there's a number of Qigong practices. There's what we call the 3 cleansing exercises. And, I can share these practices with everybody. And it's basically just to get the energy moving. One is called tossing the stone, a very simple practice of inhaling, bring the arms up, and then tossing like you're tossing a stone, letting go. But as you're doing it, being mindful, like check in with your body. Like, I just woke up, I'm doing this Qigong practice. Do I have any tension in my shoulders or my neck? Using your mind intent, which is very powerful, to guide that blockage out the arms as you're tossing the stone, right? Another favorite practice of mine too, that I give to people, whether you're just waking up or the next time somebody makes you angry or you get angry at something, is shake the tree. Kind of like this Taylor Swift song, "Shake It Off." That's what you do. So the next time somebody makes you angry, you start, from a standing or seated position, you just shake from head to toe. You can
I love that.
do this several times, and
I
guess
thought
what?
you're actually grabbing a tree and you start shaking.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh no.
well, the whole body. Now, if you're too like paranoid as to what people might think of you, or whatever, and you're shaking like this, then it's too stiff. You really just have to let go. Because this is one of my favorite Qigong practices because we are one of the only mammals or animals on land that does not shake it off when something happens to us. Now,
Oh.
sometimes the trauma will be so severe that your body will start shaking. My dad was in Vietnam and was shot down. And he was telling me one time that right after being shot down, they got out under heavy gunfire. And he was at the bar later on that night, and he went to take a drink of a beer, and his arms started violently shaking. And so his body said to him, "All right, guess what? You can pretend like you're a cool 21-year-old, but you almost died there." So sometimes that nervous system will kick in and make you shake. But for most of us, we get angry. What do? We suck it up. You see it with little kids. Little kids start crying. The parents say, "Shut up." And the kids go, "Oop, oop, oop." So right, we learn to start to stuff.
Or
And
be a
that's,
man or be,
yeah,
be
be a man,
strong.
be a man. Right. That's a common one. Be a man. Um, and the unfortunate thing about that is that once it gets stuck in the body like that, when you trap it like that, that's really what creates the stagnation and the inflammation. So that shaking it off. And you know what? If somebody makes you mad, well, obviously you probably won't do it in front of them. I would go to another room. If somebody makes you mad about something, you may have to shake it off several times throughout the day. Whenever that thought comes up, if it starts to create a trigger inside your body, then you shake it off, because it's one thing to still have the thought. It's another thing to have that vibration. What we're trying to do is we're trying to release the vibration around the circumstance, which when suppressed turns into inflammation and disease.
So when the thought comes in, you still have that lingering pause
Feeling.
before the emotion comes in. So the moment the thought comes in, shake it off so it doesn't go to the emotion and then becomes a habit and then becomes your lifestyle.
Yeah, and you just suck it up, right? You just suck it up. Like how many people dislike the work that they do, and they have a boss or coworkers that bully them or don't respect them, right? And they just suppress it, right? Well, you don't have to suppress it, and maybe you're stuck in that position right now, and you have to do that job or whatever. But you could always go into a bathroom somewhere and shake it off. So instead of suppressing it, if somebody says something derogatory to you, go and shake it off several times. And if the thought comes up and it starts to create any kind of angst in the body, just go and shake it off, because at least then you don't allow it to create disease inside your body. And going back to one of the other things that you had brought up earlier, when we're checking in with the ego, that's one of my questions to myself is, do I want this to influence me in a way that's going to show up as disease inside my body? So part of my questioning to myself when I check into myself, whether I'm going to say something to somebody or not, is if I don't say anything, am I really truly going to be able to let it go? Because it's the letting go part and not suppressing. There's a difference between suppressing and truly letting it go. Because I check in with myself, and a lot of times I will say something to somebody, and I can say something in an articulate manner, even if the person perceives it the wrong way or whatever. I ask myself the question, I check in and say, do I want to allow this to create a possible discord inside my body? And because I see thousands of sick and injured people, the answer is no. The answer is no.
So you have a very strong practice of actually checking in with your body and asking like even different parts of your body, hey, are you okay? Is this okay? Is this good for you? Is this not? And I've learned that by brushing the teeth.
Oh,
Somebody had shared this with me
mm,
several years ago. It's like when you brush your teeth, ask your teeth if everything is okay in your body. And I'm like,
mhm.
what do you mean? So I'm like brushing my teeth in the evening and I'm like, is everything okay in the body? And they're like, no, you actually have to take care of your lungs a little bit. And then you have to do this. And then I need a little bit of that. And I'm like, did I just hear that message from my body? So ultimately, it's just trusting that everything that we have communicates with us. your hands, your head, your heart, your kidney, everything communicates. You simply have to ask like a different entity, is this
Mhm.
good for you? What can I do for you?
Yeah, and you bring up another. Gosh, I could just talk to you all day.
We have all day.
You bring up another good point when you're talking about the mouth, because your mouth is what? The mouth is a place where nutrition enters, right?
It's a
The
portal.
nutrition is, what's that?
The mouth is a portal for things to come in and go out. That's a
Go
portal.
out.
How we communicate with everything that is.
Yeah, so how's the nutrition of what you're allowing people to say to you and what you're saying to other people?
How clean is your portal?
Exactly. And so there's actually qigong practices in order to harness the saliva. They call it jade dew, in order, because the mouth is this entryway, but there are actual qigong techniques, which also falls into the the osteopathic craniosacral school and the craniosacral school of dentistry as well too. Rotating the tongue, for example, 36 times clockwise around the teeth, opposite,
How many
and
times?
36 times both
36.
ways.
Okay.
And then what you do is the saliva that's built up, then you mindfully guide that energy down into your stomach, and you do that. You swallow 3 times, guiding each time down into your stomach, and then you bite down. 9 to 36 times on the left side, the front and the back, and all this stuff here. And the reason why is because the besides what it's doing as far as nurturing our mouths, more importantly, it's also nurturing our digestive system, which the digestive system is the main key for the function of all the organs. So that stomach, and actually they'll say in Chinese medicine, if somebody spits a lot, it actually will deplete stomach qi. Also, too, if somebody speaks improper or not kind words to others, that also will deplete others' chi as well. So one of my favorite plays that I've seen is Hamilton, and one of my favorite parts of that one song that they have on Hamilton is he says, "Talk less and smile more. Don't let them know what you're against and what you're for." So
Ooh, that's
it's
good.
really,
We need to write that down.
yeah, because it's really the truth. Like, maybe we need to listen more and talk less and conserve the energy coming out of our mouth and just listen and observe, because that's one great way of observing and restoring your stomach health as well too. Oh, and you want to hear something interesting? So the stomach and spleen work together in Chinese medicine, and one of the things that we could tell from Chinese face reading, because I could read a person's face to diagnose or assess them, is that the little lines around a person's mouth, now they call those smoker lines. So people could develop those smoker lines if they are nurturing others more than the nurturing that they're getting back. So they don't have to develop smoking. And if you think about it, not all people that smoke develop smoker lines, but when people are smoking, even though it's not healthy, they feel like they're somehow giving something back to themselves, right? So it's a form of nurturing. So if somebody is over nurturing others, depleting their stomach and spleen chi, and not getting that fulfillment, that nourishment back, you actually will see these lines show up around the mouth.
Interesting. Very interesting. So you're like a Jedi. When you see a person, you're like, okay. I know you. I
Yeah,
feel them, I sense them. You study the physicality.
yeah, I can't help it. I've been doing this for so long, and not everybody, normally, like, there's certain features, that will pop out when I first meet somebody. Like, you could tell somebody tends to flirt a lot, so I tend to play with those people a little bit more, but you could tell certain things, but it's normally if a person has a certain personality quirk, some they say, then I will look deeper. But yeah, because I've been doing this for so long, you can sense when there's sorrow or loss. You can sense by their demeanor, you can see how they move, how they may favor one side or whatnot. And it just becomes a natural, really quick assessment. You kind of really see what it is that's approaching you. So whether, you're out in public or it's a one-on-one conversation, you're just meeting somebody, being observant over everything what kind of smells are coming off the person, like, believe it or not, it could be something very subtle. It all means something clinically. What kind of colors are on their face? It may be a faint hue, of slight green, like around their jaw or something like that. That all is telling us that there's something else going on. So yeah, I can't help it, but yeah, when I meet somebody,
You read the physical body like a Bible.
yeah, it just becomes so innately a part of it. And my job isn't, like when a patient comes in, when I start saying, oh well, you have father issues, you have daddy issues or whatever, it's not to force feed them that they have the daddy issues. It's to present the opportunity that, well, I'm still seeing this on the face, so chances are it's still in your tissue somewhere.
So the moment they clear that, oh, and that's why a lot of times when they do different healing modalities, their face shifts, the body
Changes.
shifts,
Yep.
everything changes.
Everything changes, and they call it the ever-changing face because if you change how you perceive something, for example, people that are very skeptical, that don't trust, they have
Oh, you
squinted
look very
eyes.
skeptical right now.
Yeah, very skeptical, right? They have squinted eyes, right? So they don't trust. They're very critical of others, and they're very critical of themselves. So if they become aware of this and become less critical, more loving to themselves and forgiving to themselves and to others, guess what? Their eye shape will change.
So amazing. And I feel like I could ask you golden nuggets every day. One thing I want to ask you, because you mentioned something before, how important it is that we need that community, we need that support, we need that team that supports us in this time, and not just this time, but everything we go through. Because today we might have a great day, and tomorrow a wave comes in, and you're like, I have no idea. I'm just feeling all of this. Do you have a support community? What does that look like?
So yeah, so I believe, and I think that the support community has come about because of a certain vibration, because everything is a vibration, right? And so you and I, we vibrate at a similar frequency, right? And as a result, we have similar friends and that we have surrounded ourselves with. Well, I also have other groups of people that are of a similar vibration that are aware of themselves, the importance of having faith, the importance of self-care, self-love, and as a result, it's the similar vibration. So yes, I'm surrounded by a really big supportive group of people. And what I do too is I cut off people that are not. And this is one of the things I tell the people, because they don't teach boundaries in school, like how to have healthy boundaries with people. If your family members are not respecting you and don't respect your boundaries, for me, it's like, you know what? I can't change you. God bless you. But till there's an awakening or something like that, I'm going to keep my distance. And the reason why I'm doing that is, number one, I'm telling God, I'm telling the universe what's acceptable in my environment, right? And I only want healthy, loving people in my environment. And if you are unhealthy, whatever your reasoning is, whatever the cause is, that's not my problem. It's up to you. We're all individuals. It's up to us to take responsibility for our actions and our thoughts and how we treat other people. So yeah, so I'm very big on I will cut people out that are of that lower vibration, that are not respectful, that are not. Veronica, it'd be one thing for you, and this is, I think, the relationship that we have in if I was acting out, you'd be the first one to say to me, you know what, Chris, you're acting like an ass here, but I still love you anyways.
Oh
Right.
yeah, I'm the truth teller. There's no
Yeah.
holding back.
Yeah. So, and I respect that, right? Because that's how it should be, right? Say, I see that you're messed up here, your perception is off here. I still love you though, as opposed to trying to dominate or try to manipulate, and such. And so if you start to set a standard for what you allow into your life and people into your life, then more of the people that you want into your life come. Jim Rohn, one of my favorite philosophers, who's passed away a number of years ago, on character building and financial independence, he says on one of his talks, he said, in order to attract more beautiful people, make yourself more beautiful, right? And it doesn't mean necessarily external. It means make yourself more beautiful on the inside, and you will attract the same.
Become what you wish to have.
Yeah, 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 and really say no. Say no, like no to people that just want to be energy leeches. And you can still have compassion for them, but you can still say, you know what? I don't need to have that in my life. We're all on a journey.
And every time you set those boundaries, you actually allow more of your power to come back in that maybe you lost in the childhood, maybe you lost in past lives.
Yeah, totally.
So
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful way. The way you said it is like, well, the moment I set the boundary, I let the universe know that this is what I allow or don't allow in my life.
Mhm.
And that is very profound.
It's like what you are going to allow to put into your body and what you're not going to allow to put into your body.
Yes. Do you have a group that you do Qigong weekly online, or is it only in your office in LA? How does that work?
So yeah, so we have something called the Chi Club that's Monday through Thursday from 8 to 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's a live class. We have members from all over the world that join us. About the Chi Club is it's number one, it's a half-hour class. And if you can't show up live for the class, then what happens is that you have the recordings for up to a week. And my wife teaches on Monday and Wednesdays. I teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So as I'm teaching these Qigong practices, I'm describing what is the medical medicinal purpose behind it, not just go through the movement because it feels good. And especially in this time and space where there is so much fear. We started this online course or class during the pandemic, and at first it was free. Now it's still, and now it's really inexpensive. It's only like 33 or $35 a month, but we did it for free because we saw how many people were losing their jobs out there. And we didn't realize the impact that it had on people's lives until after we saw the economy start to pick up again. And we started getting emails and letters and donation checks and stuff from people from around the world saying how much it helped them emotionally when they were stuck in that fear, to give them the strength to pull out of it. So I recommend that to anybody. It's live. You don't have to turn on your camera, and like I said, it's a great way of having an internal practice to deal with your day-to-day life stuff as well as past stuff.
Absolutely. And we'll place the link underneath so people can find you and find a way to continue this journey and practice, bring that Qigong, that movement, meditation in your life, because we do a lot of work that is energetic and healing and on the soul level. We can't ignore the physical part. We have to bring the movement. In fact, that is step number one. We have to get from our mind into our hearts. And what a better way to do that than begin to move?
Right. Yeah. And understand why you're moving like you're moving. Now, sometimes I agree that I believe in free movement and stuff like that. And especially in combination with sound, I believe in all that. But when you become much more specific in the movement and understanding where you're guiding it to, then now you have a tool to deal with your trauma.
So move with intention.
Yes, with intention.
Mm. I know you have a beautiful Qigong practice that you'd like to share with us. Would you please let us know what it's about?
So yeah, so what I'm going to share with you guys is that shaking the tree practice. It's such a simple practice to do. Should I share one or two practices? Because the other practice I want to share is the heart healing sound, and we'll have that video as well. Anyways, a heart healing sound, because your heart is the emperor, empress of the body. It dictates how much of emotion is going to be expressed or suppressed. So, for example, if you get angry, your heart races and attacks your liver and your gallbladder. If you become afraid, your heart races and attacks your kidneys and your bladder. So, what this exercise does is it helps to deal with those specific emotions. And what's cool about it is that you can take it with you anywhere.
Beautiful. And we'll have that for our VIP members. Thank you so much. What a beautiful, amazing gift to share our with our fellow angel humans who are looking for that next modality, who are looking for that next ability to come back to the beautiful, amazing, loving selves, because that is what we're here to unite in oneness, in one consciousness, in one heart, in one beautiful, amazing world. Chris, you're such a gift in my life personally and
Oh,
to the
thank you.
world. And I'm so, so, so looking forward to more people discovering not only the humbleness, but all the wisdom and the love that comes through you. Because anytime you work on someone, you just put so much love into
Mm.
it. Just being in your presence, I personally feel cherished and safe and supported. And it's like, here's my social, here's my link account. You're just that person.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, and it's reciprocal because I feel that love and that caring from you as well too, and and going back to support group, you are that support group, and what you're doing with your show. is giving people access to a support network of healers from around the world that can help really inspire them, and then understand that you're not alone, that there are a lot of people out there like you that can help you achieve the best version of yourself that you could possibly be.
And so it is. And
And
let's
so it
finish
is.
this with this beautiful message to take care of ourselves, of our inner kingdom, of our new earth inside of us before we're able to see it outwards. The
Yeah.
change begins with you. The change begins with that choice to become more of you. Until the next time.
See you later.